Steve Nash is in good traffic this week. Steve, first of all, thank you so much for coming to Culdesac Tempe today to the Good Traffic Studio and for joining us on the show to talk about the built environment, American walkability, and how it merges kind of with a lot of the work you're doing in the health space, Healthspan space, and quality of life space.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
And we're also joined by a repeat guest, a fan favorite. One of the reasons why we're here in this space today, Ryan Johnson, the CEO and founder of Culdesac.
Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. So we're excited today to talk about, I alluded to it a minute ago, this concept of Healthspan, which I think a lot of folks are starting to hear more in the zeitgeist a lot, but we hear about lifespan, we hear about quality of life. Could you just run through kind of what the concept of Healthspan is to get us started?
Sure. I mean, it'd be great to live a long time, but not nearly as great as to live well for as long as possible. And I think that's the genesis behind this kind of field of research. I like to call it longevity 2.0 in that there's more of a fundamental framing for longevity here and purpose, rather than, I feel like the longevity industry has kind of been corrupted with magic pills and charlatans and you know all the kind of shiny products that may extend your life or performance. So Healthspan essentially is your good health years. It is where you're active, avoiding chronic disease, living a healthy and pain-free lifestyle. Average lifespan in the US is 77 and climbing due to medicine. Average health span is 63 and plateauing. The research and why I'm passionate about it is because there is compelling research around it, and where they've identified 5 pillars that if you prioritize those 5 pillars, you can add good decades to your life, right? It's not like, for smoking for 10 years, you've lost a year and a half, like this is like, you can add good decades of enjoyment and fulfillment. And on the backside, not put yourself or your family through the stress of negative health outcomes. Elongating your health span also limits your care span, is what some people call that space between your health span and your lifespan. So the 5 pillars that they've identified, which is no one will be surprised, but by integrating, I think we have to realize the integrative effect, like how each pillar has an effect on the other. So the 5 pillars are exercise, sleep, mental health, diet, and social interaction. Social interaction, in a sense, is proxy for emotional health, because the support system, the purpose, the avoiding isolation, that sense of community, that a lot of research has shown that has a tremendous effect on your wellness and elongating your health span. But as you can see, like if someone's a sedentary person and it's important to move, we're made to move and our system thrives on movement. But it's also one of the most difficult things to start if you haven't been somebody that moves or exercises or is active. You can imagine if someone's not emotionally well, it's already hard enough to start a movement journey. If you're emotionally not well or don't have a great support system or purpose, or you having mental health issues, or you have a real struggle with diet or sleep, you can see the effect it's going to have on movement, right? So Healthspan kind of looks at the whole picture. And, I'm really bullish about all the fundamentals, as I think everyone can identify them in isolation, but the integrative effect is also really powerful in my eyes, right? Like, and what's the momentum that's gained by sleeping well and moving? Now that improved your mental health and your emotional health, for example, now you can make better dietary choices. And there's a lot of science behind all these connectors, but I think it's under kind of represented. So yeah, I'm already on a rant, but passionate about people having better performance. And by performance, I mean enjoyment. And elongating those health span years.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And when we're looking at those 5 pillars, I think they all are very entangled and intertwined with, building walkable neighborhoods, building places where people and their wellness is put first. But the 2 that kind of stick out to me are the mobility piece and that social interaction piece. I think those are, I don't know if you all frame it the same way, but here at Culdesac and at other walkable communities, but that feels like such a big part of any successful neighborhood. And I think we're doing a good job of it here to get started.
Yeah, people are happier, healthier, and wealthier when they live in a walkable neighborhood.
I love that. So I know we said that now this is kind of in the zeitgeist and it's become a very popular topic. And obviously you and others are at the forefront of that. But you've been kind of on this wave for a long time, looking all the way back at your playing days and intertwining movement into your basic everyday life as kind of just a principle of waking up and being a human. How did you get introduced to the Healthspan concept? And kind of what was that experience like to now obviously having this being part of your big professional pursuit?
Yeah, it's hard to actually figure out where was the beginning,
Mm.
but definitely there's been some pivotal figures. I think being kind of exposed to, I think a study Harvard did and a couple other studies that were out there where people making kind of, these announcements on that they've coined this phrase and that there was 5 pillars identified and that there's a belief that it could extend your health span by decades. These kind of monumental shifts and benefits of following the 5 pillars. That got me excited. And then, you know, Dr. Peter Attia started to become very popular with his podcasts and his book. Same with some other personalities in the space. Dr. Huberman, for one. All very kind of Healthspan focused. Of course, they go outside maybe the remit of Healthspan, but it's all in that kind of human performance longevity lens. So just really starting to follow and read and learn and just kind of get really, really kind of abreast of all the different information that's out there. I think there's so many, so far, you can take this so far, but what I also really like about it is that it's really fundamental, right? Like, sleep, like prioritize it. Right. Like don't just say, I'll get some next week. Right. Like it's like start to build a sleep habit, and I think that's the word that's central to all these things is forming habits, right? As human beings, we are our habits. Our habits kind of dictate who we are, what we do, what we represent. And so trying to build habits or frame it in that lenses allows you to say, well, okay, I hate exercise, but it's pretty pivotal to my performance, happiness, longevity. How do I start to build a small movement habit? So far at our company, Block Training, we have one product called the Daily 8. And so it's 8 minutes of mobility and stability. And so it can be good for anyone. There's 3 intensities, intensity 1, my mom in her 70s can do and does. Intensity 3, any professional athlete could do, but so can other people. And finding meet the person where they're at and give them a path to one, creating a healthy habit. Because if you want to make a change, you want to move, you want to add, mobility or movement into your life. I think it's really difficult to say to people, well, you should walk for 45 minutes 3 times a week. A lot of people have they've never budgeted for 45 minutes. They haven't walked forever other than from the car to wherever. So giving them a safe landing spot that's not intimidating, that exposes them to, I can do this, to build momentum, to build confidence, to add onto the habit. These are all principles of the habit sciences. So the Daily 8 was built on giving someone an opportunity. Okay, you want to make a change? Here's 8 minutes a day. That's all it takes. And frankly, if you do 2 minutes, but you do it every day, you're on your way to creating a habit. So it's the same with mental health. Our company, instead of offering meditation first, which we believe in, we've offered 30, 60, and 90-second breathing protocols to manage your nervous system, stress, anxiety.
I did one of those right before this.
Oh,
the energy one.
I hope
30 seconds.
I hope you did 90 if you're going to have to put up with me for the next hour. But,
our team also did, we did the Daily 8 at Culdesac today.
That's wonderful.
Just intensity 1, but
intensity
we'll
1.
work up.
Good. Yeah, but I mean, that's the point though, is it's not always got to be an Olympic or Herculean lift. It's just how can you build an identity for someone that moves? That I move. I do 8 minutes every day. That is, add those 8 minutes up throughout the year, throughout a decade to someone that doesn't move.
Oh yeah.
The other principle is in the habit sciences is once you've created a healthy habit, it begets other healthy habits. So there is a component of momentum here and belief, confidence, where maybe I could walk. Right. Yeah. I could live in a walkable community, for example, instead of someone's like, wait, I don't use my car for everything. So, for me, I think the habit portion of this is really important and framing it in an attainable way, right? Not like, hey man, you got to sleep, take care of your mental health, exercise, social interaction, diet, all those things. Cause I think that becomes overwhelming, but it's let's make a small incremental change. The first one is let me identify where these 5 pillars are and what's my relationship with them? Can we message people in that way? And it's which one do you want to try first? And let's find a small incremental way that I can find an inroad into that pillar and then slowly build a tiny habit. Then people, I think, start to see what's possible rather than, whoa, this is too much, or I don't identify with movement, or I'm just not a good sleeper. It's okay, you're not a good sleeper, but why? What's your sleep routine?
I like the structure of the app. It has bite-sized pieces to start and it's a lot less intimidating than, say, going to a yoga class where you can watch it, where a move in a yoga class where I'd be worrying I'm doing it wrong and self-conscious. Instead, I can watch it 10 times on the app and get it right and then go to the next one.
Right. That's great. Well, yeah, I mean, that's essentially a big part of this is trying to give people, for example, we in our company, we sell B2B, and so you can download it on the app store as a consumer, but we sell B2B just as a business choice for distribution, profitability. But what we hear from companies is like, if you give someone a fitness benefit, maybe it's a Peloton membership, essentially it's the 10 to 20% of the company that already do stuff in that space, they use it. So what about the other, let's call it 80%, it might be 60 in some companies, it might be 90 in others. How do we transform a workforce if we're not having any impact on the majority of a company? And the same for our population or a community like Culdesac, right? How do we get people to shift their way of thinking just slightly to open their eyes to how a walkable community can be really impactful to their wellness, their well-being, their disposition, their mood, all those things. Like those are starters for how can I have a good day.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like, so you have all the ingredients in a walkable community. We're trying to build and provide them on our app so that people have a chance, right, to see a deeper level of kind of consistency, consistency in mood and clarity and train of thought. All those things, they come from sleep, exercise, mental health. So, I think we're very like-minded. You guys are doing it from an environment standpoint, and we're doing it from behaviors, programming, trying to get to personalization through an app.
And you kind of you beat me to a point there, which is that I think we talk about a lot the environmental side of things. We talk about the economic benefits of going car free or waning off of a car for transportation or just mobility day to day. But the baking into your just seamless everyday life movement, and this is kind of what you're doing with an 8-minute cycle, is very practical, very doable. Doesn't matter if you work this much, you work this much, you have this family, you don't. Most people can find 8 minutes laying around in a day to dive in and experience that. I think what a lot of active mobility and transportation is about is trying to bake those things into things you would already be doing in your life. So if I'm going to the store, if I could walk there, that's exercise. And now I didn't have to then go set aside time when I already had to drive there. And when I include walking to that parking garage, parking in the parking lot, walking in the store, we're probably talking about a similar amount of time a lot of times. So that's a big piece that I love as a parallel there.
Yeah. There's a principle in the habit sciences or a thought called habit stacking.
Yeah.
Right. So if your habit is to go to the store and you couple it with a habit of walking to the store, and that's a habit, you do it repeatedly, right? Think about the compounding effect of that rather than like, I walked to the store today, but I drove to the store the next 99 days. Right. Like, so you guys are allowing people to start to stack habits, healthy habits, whether it's the social piece, finding community, finding a place where you have lots of potential friends or colleagues to interact with, to bump into, that's an important piece. So is the walkability. But again, it's all intertwined. It's all intertwined. And so is the environmental piece, even though it's not maybe our mandate, but there's huge components that proves that both of these kind of systems, whether it's the environment or whether it's Healthspan, are aligned and need each other to continue to improve for our well-being.
And I think it's also profoundly important for an elite performer such as yourself, who was, we were talking earlier, you were balling out before I was even born. And I remember you were the first basketball jersey I ever had. So there's like all this stuff, that throughout time, you're this elite performer. And now you're saying to people, hey, you don't have to go do these Olympic level lifts to be in a healthy place in your life for a very long time. We've talked about before, and I think about a lot the fact of, the US probably has more gyms per capita than, I don't have stats on this. It's something I would love to do a study on, but we probably have more gyms per capita in this country than just about anywhere in the world. But there's countries like, the Northern European countries that have active lifestyle, that have mobility just baked in. Yeah. And they probably have way less gyms than we do. But if you put those populations side by side, which one's healthier?
Yeah, that's the point, right? We have the most gyms because we love to sell the aspiration. But we also have the most, I think, obese society, which is kind of indicative of our overall health. It's also, whether that's above or below what type of food is available to us. How do we grow it? Where do we procure it from? All these things. We live in a society of convenience, which is not good for mobility. We live in a society of convenience of food, which is not good for whole foods and health. So all the forces in our society are making it harder to be healthy, harder to have a great kind of health span, so to speak, or optimize your health. So
And so much of the built environment is not helping that, right? It's not safe to bike to the gym. And so you bike to the gym to get on or you ride a car to the gym to get on a stationary bike.
that's right. That's right. So that's where, I think you can start to create new habits in a community like Culdesac that will help you, gain that momentum. Like now I do 2-3 positive habits in a day that I wouldn't have done it if I didn't live in a community like this, a walkable community where I ride my bike, where I come across, an actual community of neighbors, colleagues, friends, all these things, they start to stack on each other. And that's why, again, like repeating what I said earlier about the compounding effect, right? Like that's what we're looking for. And I think it's hard maybe in your 20s, maybe in your 30s. And then all of a sudden you have kids and your days become a little more waterlogged and you're like, then you start to say, man, if I don't take care of myself, where am I going to be in 10 years? It's even more so true, like when you get into your 50s, 60s, you start to see people, maybe slightly older than you that have had negative health outcomes. And you realize, wow, this is right around the corner. But the compounding effect of that, when you start in your 20s, 30s, 40s, to really take and prioritize the 5 pillars, now all of a sudden, you have that momentum. You've already extended your health span, and now you can extend it further by continuing or being consistent with that lifestyle. So whether it's an app like Block Training, whether it's just a real discipline and habits around the way you live, or a community like Culdesac, these are all forces that are giving you an opportunity to like make an inroad into stacking habits, creating a healthy environment for yourself. That is what is, like I said, if we are our habits, your health span is indicative of your habits. And so Culdesac, I think, is the type of communities we need for people that, maybe they don't want to go to the gym. Maybe they don't want to go to the gym, but they want to be super active. They want to be social. Maybe those things that aren't come natural to them, those are things that are not in their current environment. Well, all of a sudden they've just solved 2 or 3 things, just by committing to a lifestyle in a different community. So coming at it from different angles, but I think a lot of tangential or alignment in our principles.
And if you do want to go to the gym here is
nice. I can attest.
Yes.
I can attest.
It makes it very easy to do actual
for sure
larger workouts as well when you have a space like that you want to go into every day. So
Erin on our team was a competitive power lifter, and she's like, Ryan, I can't work for a company that makes a gym that doesn't have at least 2 squat racks. So that, she made sure we had a great one.
That's awesome.
That's good.
We enjoy it every morning. So it's quite nice. So with those 5 pillars and with what you're doing with Block Training, what is the kind of push out from just the one-to-one relationships, right? With the consumers who are getting on the app and bettering their lives. Are you all kind of intertwining or looking to intertwine with others who are working in those spaces? Sure.
Well, eventually we'd love to have that, we aim to have a social interaction component to the app as well, and that could be, as simple as, integrated, shared kind of community interaction on the app with their habits. But it could be even more robust. But I think for us at this point, the social interaction piece has been more around like challenges in companies.
Sure.
Offering an opportunity for people to get benefits or rewards or perks by competing in a daily 8 challenge, for example. Those types of things where we've tried to build community and give people an opportunity to say, hey, I'll try this. Because as we know, community is so imperative to everything, whether it's your health span, or whether it's the success or the ability for a community to thrive. There has to be that connectivity. So connected fitness or health or habits is a huge part of that. And that's why I'm really excited about what you guys are doing, because you're providing that's baked into the ethos of a community like Culdesac.
Certainly. And with the social interaction piece, it's something I think about a lot with technology, and whether it's health tech or even just things like Zoom, right, that we use that are connection tools, but they also inherently sometimes isolate us a little bit.
They do.
Put us by ourselves in an experience. What are some of the things about Block Training that do kind of create a more communal feel to the betterment process?
And I'll be honest, at this early stage, we have a lot of growth to make in those ways, but I'm a big believer. Like our aim is not to have people just live on our app. It's for our app to be a tool that fits into their ecosystem, that still pushes them to get out and do things with other people. We don't want to be, your one and only.
Mm.
We want to be something that kind of sits in the middle of all the different activities you do. And so how many ways can we help you connect with people? Eventually long term, that's something that's really important to us. And so, the community piece, like you said, um, social media, Zoom, there's so many ways we can connect, but there's nothing like face to face. There's nothing like spending time with human beings. That is by far the most helpful and I think steady way to be healthy and to extend your health span and to connect with people in a meaningful way. You can be on Zoom every day, but as I think we all realize in this world where we're all on Zooms quite regularly, there is something missing from sitting around a table together. I think even this conversation, if we were doing this on Zoom, hopefully it would be a great episode. But the reality is that I don't think it's ever going to be as good as us sitting here together, being able to kind of sense and feel each other's interaction.
Sure, absolutely. So I want to talk a
In
little.
most communities in the U.S., they're so disconnected that the idea of an entire community, doing a program together, it just doesn't make sense, right? You're like most people in apartment complexes, they're lucky if they know one person, right? It's very different at Culdesac. What you were talking about the measures of social satisfaction, and that could actually happen here, right? Normally, people only think about let's like have a whole company do it. But why can't a whole neighborhood or a whole community do it, right? 100 years ago in the US, that wouldn't have been crazy at all. The thought of it happening at work would have been crazy, actually. And that's one of the reasons that I'm really excited for communities like Culdesac to change this dynamic.
Huh. Yeah, that's super cool.
It's funny. I make this analogy a little bit like youth sports. It's become so specialized. And the reason it's become specialized is kind of our society has taken it and said, I can make way more money if I make a club and I tell this kid, his parents, that he has a chance to go to college or pro. And so by the time they're 6, 7, or 8, the parents are like, I don't want to take this opportunity away from my kid. We got to go all in, right? And so now the kid's on this track that he or she has not decided to go on and is following someone else's pathway, right? So there's this these forces that have put us in a position where we can't help it, but we have this pathway. It's similar what you guys are doing. So my idea is to recreate my childhood, where you played in the street with your friends, you at the park, you played 3 or 4 sports in a year. I would like to recreate that in a sports setting for kids. You guys are kind of doing that in to what the Blue Zones have done.
Is that where some of the creativity came from?
Right. Yeah. Not for block.
I wasn't curious about block, but in basketball, do you think that you became a much better passer because of the other sports?
Sure, 100%. I don't think I would have played in the NBA if it wasn't for all the other sports. If you just subscribe to the 10,000 hours, which even the scientist that did that paper, he said he didn't agree with that, but it's been co-opted now that the 10,000 hours will get you there. It's debatable. There's merits there, but a lot of my 10,000 hours conceivably came from all the other sports. I didn't really start playing basketball until I was 13, but I think it's just healthy for kids, right? Because I think what happens to that kid that gets put in this track, they pick the sport, it's soccer, they get signed up, someone says, hey, they're pretty good.
They can play soccer.
They could play college or pro, or you got some ability. And then the parents are like, wow. So they've got this hook, right? So for example, now that kid gets into that sport, and by the time they're 13 or 14, they often wonder whose journey was this? And now they're emotionally unwell. It's too late to maybe choose another sport, or they don't have the confidence to want to shift because they don't know what they're getting into in that sport. So for me, it was I was playing everything. So I was healthy. If I had stopped playing sports, I'd have been good because no one told me this is what you're doing. It was all up to me. Do you want to play soccer? Yes. Do you want to play hockey? Yes. Do you want to play baseball? Yes. Do you want to play lacrosse? Yes. There's no no's, right? Then it was, I want to play basketball now, right? There's no one telling me what I'm doing and changing gears. Similar, I think, to reverse engineering what you've done. You're reverse engineering the Blue Zones, essentially, right? The Blue Zones there's 7 or 8 around the world. I think you guys have dug into this as well. But
we had Dan Burden from the Blue Zones group here. Yeah,
exactly.
He was right here a couple weeks ago.
Exactly. These communities have been proven to have essentially the 5 pillars of Healthspan, and your, or whatever form of that Culdesac provides you, right? Community activity, all those things, social interaction, mental health, you are essentially integrating these behaviors because they're right here at home in your environment. So that I think is profound, and I think why this is a great business and environment, but also kind of sad. We have to do this. We have to reverse engineer, community. We have to reverse engineer childhoods. But that's the nature of it in a world that technology is hockey stick, is a hockey stick curve. Well, we got to figure some things out as we go here. It's not all positive, and then we have to try to pick up the pieces and take the good and also augment it with what we've learned.
Post-career, when did you kind of realize that you wanted to take this as far as you're taking it now?
I think the biggest part of it is that I already subscribed to a lot of this stuff, was already interested in this. I think I'm, essentially, I love to move. I love to play sports. I love to be active. But I also recognize that when I don't move, my mental health suffers, and not like, wild, mood swings or even any sort of diagnosis. It's just my mood suffers. I have more anxiety. That impacts other areas of your mental health and behaviors, and then that impacts and trickles down into your habits, right? And so as you gain momentum with healthy habits, you can gain, or get the opposite from negative habits and behaviors. So for me, that was the genesis. Like I already had to move to be happy and be healthy. So that's a positive in some sense. Maybe I need some therapy to dig into why, but it's working out quite well for me in general, that I just have to move every day. But then you start to think like, well, what component does sleep play in this puzzle? So I'd already, when I was playing in my career, and I was curious to try to find an advantage, where could I win a margin here and there? And diet came up, and, best practices of training or skill acquisition. And so I was very curious. And then, I kind of came across all these different principles, and it kind of just evolved into this movement around Healthspan that I think is going to be ubiquitous in a few years. There's some tailwinds forming, but it's largely a term most people don't know. But they would resonate with the principles and the pillars. So it's just one that really fit into how I want to live and where I'd like to take my lifestyle, how I'd like to find longevity, and then just trying to find ways that other people can feel that. Because I feel the benefits of prioritizing the pillars. Like I'm 50 now, and I feel great, and other than a slower recovery cycle, don't feel that much different than when I was younger or playing. I think that's such an amazing feeling, is like I still can do whatever I want, more or less. So I want other people to feel that relative to where they are on their health continuum, their health kind of journey. I think it is a continuum, right? Like that's part of Block's philosophy. And I think that's what's great about Culdesac, is that you kind of can meet people where they are, right? It's not like everyone that moves to Culdesac has to be a high performer, right? That's not the case. And everyone that goes to Block training does not have to be a high performer. In fact, our goal is to meet as many people that are at the bottom of that kind of cycle and say, here's a pathway to a better lifestyle, better mood, frame of mind, mentality, openness, that will make your life better and obviously elongate it as well.
It's really resonating with me. I'm also at a milestone. I'm 40 now. And so it's the time when all my friends are talking about, oh, you're not young forever. And really thinking about, hey, how do we want to be when we're 50 and 60? And so this is definitely top of mind for me.
Well, thanks for getting it in that you're 40 and I'm 50. That was nice.
Just kidding. You want to know how old I am?
Yeah, you already said that I was playing before you were born, so
I've been a Steve Nash fan since before you were born.
I swept that under the rug. No,
24 last week.
24. There you go.
We're good. We got
less than half.
Multiple decades here.
Less than half. Very nice.
So, when you were playing and coaching, I think from the outside, a lot of people look at those professions as very high stress situations, right? I know, I don't know the NBA and as much in this regard, but I know like NFL coaches are some of the more unhealthy folks that we see in the sports world, because it is such a, head in the books job and high stress all the time.
Yep.
What did you do on a very like actionable level when you were in those high stress, kind of in the fire moments to maintain the mindset that you have around this sort of thing, an active lifestyle, but also like practically acting out that active lifestyle?
Playing and coaching is a lot different, obviously, but the principles are the same. You find ways to strategize around optimizing for performance. And so, I'm a big believer that if you're in good health, you're going to perform better. right? You're in good health, you're in better mental health, you're in better emotional health, you're in better physical health. That's important to your performance and sustainability, right? Decision making when you're tired, all that sort of stuff. So as a player, you learn coping mechanisms with stress. As I moved through my career, I got more and more comfortable. In fact, to the point where, I used to feel anxiety, um, nerves, some people may call it, that, I think I didn't even know what anxiety was when I first had it as a young player in the NBA, but I was anxious. Now I realize I was really anxious the day of games. I thought I was just nervous. Like, it's fine. You get a little older, you feel a little less nervous, a little less anxious. You get to the point, though, I think, with a certain amount of success and longevity where you kind of crave the end of games. You crave the pressure, you crave the moment. You play 82 games, then the playoffs, and not all of them come down to the crunch. And so those games where it's a dogfight down the stretch in the fourth quarter, you don't know you're there till you're there, and all of a sudden the endorphins kick in, and you're like, I'm at home now. This is what I've been waiting for. That's become your happy place in a sense. So going from a young player who was super anxious in all those situations, doesn't want to make a mistake, to an older player that craves it and is like, the killer instinct is forms where, you can't wait, and you have a totally different approach and mentality. That's a journey, like life is, right? Where you have to learn, there's no cheating experience. So that's one kind of anecdote about how I felt in my career. With stress, as a coach, it's different, right? You can't release stress physically uh, in the job, but you can release it by staying active, by staying physically fit, by getting your rest, by eating well. And so, I think, like, when you can't get out there on the court and relieve that stress by fighting for the cause, you're doing it more from a mental, emotional, psychological standpoint. I think to be able to be present in those moments and optimize your performance, you have to have those habits outside of it. So the same end game, but just a different kind of paradigm or system.
There's a study that was great. You think about the stat I always love is that there was like KJ, Jason Kidd, and Steve Nash on the team all together at one time, and that's probably pretty good mentorship. But there was a study, I think it was at Berkeley, of one of your MVP, I think your second MVP season. And they're like, Steve led the league in assists and also touches. You probably heard this.
Oh, high fives or whatever.
Yeah, high fives, butt slaps. Like they did it was something like 240 per game, and it was all about like motivating the teammates. And first of all, it's interesting that they had somebody count that. But
it was an innate for me. There was no plan behind it other than I wanted my team to feel connected.
Yeah. A connected community performs better.
I wanted to take the risk off my teammates' plates. Like, I'm going to support you. I never wrote this down or read this in a book. It was an innate feeling that I had about, essentially it's similar to building community. You want to build a connected group that enjoys going to work, that feels they can go for it, that they'll have the support to make a mistake and not, feel ashamed or consequences. So you set a high standard, you compete, you police the standards, but you also at the same time encourage, connect, create an environment where people feel free to express themselves, to make mistakes, all within kind of the boundaries of progress. And so, it was fun. It was when someone said that to me, I obviously started to realize that it's almost like a tick, but it was a habit built up over time of wanting my teammates to feel good, to feel confident, to feel like I had their back, to feel like if I throw you the ball and you miss, it's behind us. I don't care. Like, we're going to keep going. And I think it actually felt, this is anecdotal, not analytical, but it felt like, it was profound, the impact of if I threw someone the ball and it went right in their hands and right out of their hands and they were embarrassed, I would say, my bad. So right away, the whole arena, that player knew that everyone in the arena saw that, I might have just missed him on that one. Instead of that, me going, rolling my eyes, turning my back. And then what's the trickle down effect of that? And so people feeling more confident to catch the ball, less pressure, less risk. And therefore their kind of resilience or ability to bounce back grew. And so I don't know. That was just kind of the way I operated, and felt at the end of the day, is as much about winning as much about enjoying your environment and wanting everyone to look. We have a great opportunity to play together. This is a game, and we're teammates. Let's make this as fun as possible and as positive as possible, because you can have the negative attitude that one is going to hopefully or could possibly affect behaviors and performance negatively. It also affects your experience. Now it's a more negative experience. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have tough conversations or you point out when people aren't up to the standard, myself included, first and foremost. But, you also want to reinforce what's possible. And that this is an environment where we can have an incredible time, build great bonds, be super tough to beat, and have a lot of fun on the court competing. So very innate, but also just wanting people to have a good time and to feel like there was hope and upside for them and that they could thrive in this environment.
Yeah. So on the same note of kind of sports as a microcosm or a proxy for real life situations, within those playing days and also coaching, you're leading a lot of big personalities. You're, alongside of these people in the trenches trying to work towards a common goal. One of the big things about, neighborhood building and city building, and also just being a part of a community, is you're inevitably going to have just a wide spectrum of opinions on every single conversation, sure, from the color of the mailboxes to, more serious issues that are going on in the neighborhood. And I think a lot of times we go like, oh, what do you do with that? Where you're in this great situation where we're in this, free market, this democracy, all these things that make America and make neighborhoods here so possible to be like what we're trying to get back to. But I'm curious, when you're learning how to lead such a wide group of personalities, I mean, the Nets come to mind, but, also as a player, sure, were there anything that you intentionally deployed to try to make that more possible? Or how did you try to get people on the same page?
I think as a player, or say a leader, and as a coach, they're totally different roles. When you're on the court, it's completely different than you're coaching. As a coach, it was alarming to me how little you're in the locker room. You're not ever in the practice locker room, more or less. You're in the game night locker room for like a few minutes before the game, few minutes at halftime, few minutes after, right? So that's not a lot of time, So really, your time with the players, other than informally on buses, planes, hotels, whatever it may be, is in the film room and the practice floor. So they are different roles when you're playing, leading as a player or leading as a coach. But I think in both of them, I tried to value the person, not the player. So I wanted to connect with my teammates, like on their background, on their lifestyle, on what interests them, like maybe their family or whatever. That I think was important. And I think it's super important as a coach is coaching the person, right? Not just coaching the player or the team. It's, you have to find that connection point with the player to understand what makes them tick, what their hopes, dreams, goals are, what's their upside, what are they fighting for? Like, how can we, give them a platform to improve? Because I think that's what all human beings want, is to feel like someone sees value in them. Someone thinks they can get better. Someone thinks there's a big payoff for them and they get better. And I don't mean monetarily. I mean just altruistic, kind of spiritual, like, that feels great to improve, or to be in an environment where there's a pathway for me to improve. So that's important for me as a coach or as a leader, is to lead the whole person, not just the player, not treat them as a number, or, that I think is really fundamental. And I think there's other ways you can do it. That's not the only way. But for me, that was, I think, what made the most sense. Like to connect, like to understand, like to learn about people and their backgrounds and value them. And then through that, gain their trust, gain that equity, in the environment, that they know my motives are pure. I want to see them do well. And I think that's a great foundation for leading.
What do you think, as someone who's leading a community of people who's trying to lead better communities? Is there anything there?
Yeah, it's very different in the sense of there's a real clear competition in a team, and the games are very zero sum. So in that sense, there's a lot more creativity and a lot more opportunity for everyone to make something great together. One of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking about this was our retailers, actually. We have some bigger retailers. We also have some micro retailers. We have one in the room right now, and watching them bond, right? We have bonds with lots of residents, but the micro retailers, they sort of feel like a team, and they're very present because they're out there most days, and they work together to create events, to refer people to each other, and their collective success is helped by each of their individual contributions. And so watching that is amazing. From a community perspective, I don't think of it as like the coach, right? I think we think of it as like this is a campus, sort of like a university in that sense. And we want to make the built environment. We do a few signature events, and then we want things to flourish. Our signature events are, we do a night market on Thursdays called Little Choya. Hope to see you there. And we have local vendors, and it's a time for our community to gather and the surrounding community to gather. We also throw some resident events, but what we really like to see is when it's independent and it's not based upon something that we just did.
I'm curious. So you said like certain zero-sum games, or you're saying disparate kind of opinions in the community that you're trying to find commonality. But it feels like to me, like if you zoom out, like especially in the United States, but it feels like this is happening around the world. We're getting more and more polarized.
Oh yeah.
We're getting kind of, more and more, extreme as far as like, let's say if in politics in the United States, like, the middle's here, they could be so close, but because there's a divide in the middle, they almost are like, a lot of people refuse to kind of find commonality with, the blue side or red side, for example.
Right.
It feels like everything's getting so extreme, and it's kind of like platform building 101 for extreme thought, and how can a strategist sell a candidate or whatnot. And then it seems like the direction now is like, let's just take it in the mud. Let's get really extreme, really almost flagrant with this kind of polarization. Society needs some measure or force that starts to, overcome, this polarization.
Oh, yeah.
So where can we find commonality? Where can we agree to disagree? Where can we, recognize that we all come from different backgrounds, have different beliefs, but doesn't mean that, because we're on different sides of an equation, we have to like be closed-minded to the other. That's interesting to me from a Culdesac standpoint.
Yeah. Walkable neighborhoods can help this, right? And here's a flagrant foul. We have basically banned most walkable neighborhoods in the US. The reason why there aren't more walkable neighborhoods is that they're largely illegal. And we have mandated that we build urban sprawl. And that is one of the reasons why we don't know our neighbors anymore. And our kids don't play on the streets. They get driven to school. As new schools are designed with these pickup lines, the parents don't get to know each other, and the people aren't as active. It's hard to overstate how negative the impacts are from our built environment. And I think it's one of the root causes of the challenges we have in the country today.
Why is it illegal to have walking? Is it the auto industry? Is it, public transit? Like what is the reason they have barriers against walkable neighborhoods?
So a lot of this goes back a long time, but with when cars started developing, so there's a long history of real estate and transportation going together, going back to the Roman roads defined cities. When rail happened, you had real estate developers that, for example, in the Upper East Side of New York, they bought farmland, financed trains, and then that farmland was now commutable to downtown Manhattan. They built neighborhoods, etc. And there were streetcars all over the US. Phoenix actually had a 33-mile streetcar line. The rail network before cars was bigger than the current rail network. And when cars developed, for better or for worse, that defined development all over the country. And we said besides building all the roads, we said when you're building neighborhoods, you have to put a certain number of parking spaces for each housing or each office, which meant that the space needed to get stretched out, which meant that all of a sudden you couldn't get places without a car. So then you sort of needed a car to get around. And so then people bought cars. And we looked at that and we said, people want cars. People actually don't want cars. If you give them a choice between suburban sprawl and a walkable neighborhood, every generation will choose a walkable neighborhood. The National Association of Realtors did this study, even the silent generation, but it goes up for each generation. Up to 92% of Gen Z would pay a premium to live in a walkable neighborhood. But we look at people buying a car as if they want to, but then we take that data and say, oh, well, they want to have a car, so we should require parking spaces. And it's this cycle that has perpetuated, but we're breaking that. And that's a big reason why we made Culdesac. And this is now the reference project for how to build walkable neighborhoods successfully in the US in the 2020s. Other people in real estate, other cities are looking at this to say, oh, we can build differently. And look at how much better our city becomes when we do.
Fascinating. I mean, I think that's a huge story to tell, and kind of North Star, right? Like, to recognize that people actually don't want this. But we've gone so far, we can't fix it, but we can augment it, and we can give people choice and personalization. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's great about this is, like, we can't necessarily tear up Phoenix and
Right.
redistribute it, but we can augment and create villages around Phoenix that are, kind of walkable. Like I said, re-engineering the blue zones, or walkable neighborhoods. Having lived in a couple walkable neighborhoods, it's awesome, right? Like, I mean, by walkable neighborhoods, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Manhattan Beach in California. There's such a lifestyle effect that is fantastic there. Now, Phoenix has other wonderful things. Not a lot of traffic, and it's beautiful and weather, but finding the balance is so important. That perspective, right? And I think that's what's lacking right now. And it feels like everything, the forces are all in the same stream of negativity, in a sense, if that makes sense. The polarization, it's got all these different forces that are making us choose, what side are you on in this divide? And we got to break that down. I definitely think walkable neighborhoods is a huge way to connect people and to recognize there is commonality. Because if it's literally just by what news station you watch, how are we ever going to connect?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a good example, I did an episode a couple weeks ago talking about at the National Governors Winter meetings, that National Governors Association winter meetings that took place a couple months ago. The Republican governor of North Dakota, which is the 47th most populous state, is talking about we need to build more density because everything has a linear cost associated to it. And I'm watching this going like, whoa, this is not the guy. This is a potential Trump VP pick. That's right, like not the guy you expect to be having this conversation. So I posted the clip on my Instagram, and like, to your point, hundreds of comments on both sides.
Right.
Well, we don't want this guy as part of our movement. He's done all this other bad stuff.
Yeah.
On the other side, it's like, well,
everything he's done is bad because of something that he did that didn't align with you or what you were looking for, your values. Right. That's hopefully a byproduct of walkable neighborhoods, is that, say I'm left of center. I'm too close to maybe some opinions on the right. And how do I ever get a better understanding for why they feel that way and what can be done? Like, until I look at that from my own perspective, it's kind of BS for me to be like, why don't they see my perspective? And I think that's the rut we're all in, right? Is like, where's the point where we find commonality? There's just no platform for commonality anymore. And so that's what I love about what you guys are doing.
Yeah. And walkable neighborhoods have become a new bipartisan issue because it's hard to overstate the positive impacts on all kinds of social measures. It's getting more people living in walkable neighborhoods is the best thing that we can do for climate. It can make people healthier. It's fantastic for families. It can lower how much the government needs to spend on maintenance, and it's going to alleviate the burden of all of this maintenance that we need to spend on roads that's putting pressure on taxes, right? Yep. So there are so many reasons why this is better for our cities.
Right. And that's exactly what I realized through kind of reflecting on that episode and that clip, was like, oh, this walkable cities thing is a solution for people for very different reasons. And my job's not to convince them to come at it from my angle.
Right.
It's for them to understand that their angle
That's
is also solved by the same thing. And I think that was the cool thing about that. Is a lot of people going like, oh yeah, I'm very fiscally conservative and this solves my problem. This other person cares about the environment. It solves their problem. So I think the more, I'm done trying to like change people's minds, more just get them to see how this also could be beneficial for them.
Yeah, when you're at Culdesac, it sort of falls to the background. You're not sitting here like, I'm in a walkable neighborhood. You're like, this is a wonderful place and I love being here. Right. And also walkable as a term, we tend to use that as this umbrella term, but it's really about, so our residents use a portfolio of transportation options rather than having one car that you need to have a parking space that sits parked for 95% of the day. Right. Our residents are power users of Lyft. We get an unlimited light rail pass. We have Waymo here. It's a technology that's going to change our cities perhaps more than any. Also, all of our residents get a free electric bike. There's electric scooters on site. There's a car share for longer trips, and there's great amenities on site. And we're also working with the city to change it. The city is now building a protected bike lane from our light rail stop a mile north to the outdoor mall that has 12 restaurants. And when you make the roads safer, cities find that they actually had a lot more people biking than they mentioned. And so our residents can choose the right method of transportation for their trip. And that leads to more active transportation. When you're biking, it feels like a workout at the same time.
Opportunities to connect, more choice, more, like there's no negative, there's no downside to that. I think obviously one of the biggest barriers for a community like this is habits. People are used to what they're used to. And so how do we get more people to be open to like, are you sure it's positive that you're stuck in this paradigm, or that you have these habits of like, I just need my car? Like you hear that from some people. I get it. I need my things too, but I like it's, we also have to be open to like, why do I need my car? Like, why is that a comfort, a security blanket? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's what this is. Well, like for example, I think as I've gotten older, and this is going to sound really rude, but having a certain amount of being this person that's been in the public eye, it's made me less social. Right. Just fatigue and a little social anxiety, and just not sure what I'm going to come across today has made me a little more closed.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like that. It's like it's my past is informing my future in a negative way, in a sense. So I don't know. That's a tangent and something. It's like, I think we're all, let me say it this way. Human beings are an adaptive system. Yeah. We adapt to what we expose it to. So if we expose it to the sitting on the couch all day, we're going to be really comfortable sitting on the couch all day. We expose it to being social, we're going to get more and more comfortable being social. If we lock ourselves in here, we're going to be much more comfortable.
Do you bike, or do you have an e-bike?
Social. I don't. I walk a lot in my neighborhood, just like podcasts, books, calls. I walk, and just, even though I'm not going anywhere, I just like to get out and walk. And
I should show you some e-bikes. And on the fame thing, my favorite quote on this was Beyonce. She's like, I love riding my bike. And when I'm biking by, people will look at me and be like, is that Beyonce? And by the time they realize that it is, I'm gone.
Fortunately, I'm not as popular or famous or as beautiful as Beyonce, so I don't really I can relate to that. But I know your point. I know your point.
So funny. Yeah, I think this happens a lot where we know that cars are kind of the status symbol that athletes are often kind of the vessel for, right? We see every team post the videos of all the star players pulling up to the game, and they're like, wow, look at that car and stuff. And then sometimes you see guys like Klay Thompson that'll pull up to the Chase Center on the e-bike. Right. And so I'm always like, we need more of that, because it seems to move the needle like a lot more. Sure. Do you think, and you kind of alluded to this, do you think there is like a built-in thing where athletes do have a heightened responsibility to kind of, be the vessel for these sorts of imagery that we see? I
would say traditionally, yes. It's like, you're young and you're gaining an identity. Your kind of ecosystem is still trying to figure out what status symbols mean, and it's usually over-indexed, right? I think as you get older, that can dissipate. But I also think that this younger generation now is way more open to other forms of status. I don't own a car. I walk, I take public transportation, I Uber, I ride an electric bike or scooter. So I do think that the younger generation now is much less judgmental or holding on to like these, or have changed their kind of status symbols, cues. And so I like, if you look at the way 20 to 25-year-olds behaved when I was 20 to 25, I think it's a lot different. I think at the core, they're still on the same stage of life, but I don't think they feel like the same need to flex because of a car. I think that's dissipated. You may disagree, you're in that way, but I don't think it permeates as much as it did. I think there's more of an openness, and that's part of that's technology, change. I think every generation builds on the last, in a sense. So hopefully that kind of need to show status through only material things, maybe now it can be over values, experiences, friendships, talents, whatever that may be, intelligence, curiosities, that feels to me like we're shifting in that way, and that's super positive.
And not having a car, it feels like freedom. It's just a better life, and it frees up your time, it frees up your energy. Driving is so stressful, and we all become the worst versions of ourselves behind the wheel. And the cost of it is coming down right now. When you look at the cost of a trip for Lyft, you need to think about that. But as autonomous AV ride hail, such as Waymo, expands, the price point is going to come down in a way that it's going to create millions and millions of new car-free people in the US. And today, the average monthly cost of a car is something like $800 and going up The average cost of a new car is $48,000 and the average household spends $18,000 a year. And this creates a lot of budget for other transportation services and also housing, and people can live in higher quality neighborhoods because of it.
I've heard also Tesla's impact on ride sharing potentially in the future could really bring down the price point, because they could come in and say, because right now Uber and Lyft set the price point in a sense, but if they want to get themselves in that market in a massive way, they could also set the price point much lower to gain an advantage. And then all of a sudden, right, one, there's more opportunities, there's more choice, the price point lowers, not to mention the electric car component of that as well. So I agree with you on that. And the other thing we got to realize is like there's probably not much more dangerous in our life than driving.
Oh yeah.
So,
We've normalized these
right.
levels of traffic violence.
Right. And so being able to mitigate that a little bit by choice, by public transport, by, whatever it may be, I think gives us an opportunity to maybe kind of stop the curve on so much road damage, let's call it.
And coming on the real estate side, it takes so long to build, and cities evolve over decades and even centuries. And, when you think about a consumer, how I'm going to live my life today, the question of whether widespread AV ride hail happens in, it's here now, but like in terms of everywhere in 1 year, 5 years, or 20 years, that really matters. But if you're building neighborhoods, and you're thinking about who's going to live here and what they're going to want to live in, there's no question that you want to be building for a future where people are not parking a car the whole time.
Right. The U.S. spends, I think, $105 billion on freeway maintenance and upkeep every year, which is pretty wild. So yeah. To your point, I mean, the less we can rely on that to move people and from, point A to point B every day, it seems like a smart economic decision along with the health stuff we talked about.
Sure, there's some good trickle down effect on curbing some of that.
Yeah, it could go somewhere better, right?
Right?
We got a few problems.
Sure. I mean, we want them to spend, but we want maybe we can redistribute that.
Redistribute a little bit. Well, the last question we ask everyone on the show. So all the places you've lived in your career, playing, coaching, whatnot. Show's called Good Traffic. Trying to look at this thing that's unanimously agreed upon as bad and ugly. We sit, in the slow lane, and we're wishing that there was a better way to get places. And some of us are trying to build a better way to get places, but we think that traffic could be obviously a much better thing. So, out of all the places you've lived throughout your career, what's the best commute that you've ever had?
Good question. I think what coaching in Brooklyn, I walked to almost, I think, every single game. So I was like just over a mile from our house to Barclays Center, and it was like a nice opportunity to leave my kids, clear my mind, get some exercise, and kind of come in clear-headed and refreshed when I got to the arena. So that was a great commute. Walking through Brooklyn, beautiful historic neighborhood, and doing so on foot. That was probably a pretty special part about that opportunity to commute on foot.
I love it. You've answered this question before, but do you have another one?
I live at Culdesac and work here, and so I both love it from a short commute perspective and a wonderful commute. But also, this is the most important thing that I've ever worked on, and we have the chance to change the country. We want everyone to build like this, and so we want cities to visit us. We want other developers to come here. We'll talk about how to make neighborhoods like this successful, and it's going to improve so many different measures, including create longer health spans.
I knew I liked you guys for some reason. Appreciate it. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming. And we're gonna sign up for that free trial today and get
Let's go.
Is there, we'll link everything below, but is there anywhere specific you'd like people to get at you?
You can get Block Training on the App Store, and on our website too, blocktraining.com. You can get it, but also learn a little bit more about us. But yeah, whether it's us or another avenue, just really
shout out to Joe, my favorite instructor.
There you go. Joe Ferraro. Awesome guy. Yeah. Great human being as well. But, really, I just want people to optimize their happiness. And I think these pillars of Healthspan are going to allow people to live longer, optimize for now, but generally just be in a better mood, better place in their life where they're more capable and have a positive impact on their communities and others.
Awesome. Well, Steve, Ryan, thank you both for being here. Appreciate it.